Welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of the Shared Practices podcast. I apologize for my scratchy voice. I've been sick this week. It's been the denture course in my residency, meaning we've brought in a bunch of vets and we're making their dentures from scratch in a single week. So I'm doing all the lab work, all the teeth setup, all the festooning of the gingiva, and it's stuff that I've never done before because in my dental school, we did one setup on a typodont in sim clinic. We never had to do them on patients in our actual clinic. So I'm sure none of you feel bad for me that I didn't actually have to do that in dental school. And you're kind of like, okay, you deserve to be doing this now for yourself. So it's great. I'm learning, but I'm a little bit under the weather. So without further ado, this is an episode with Dr. Mark Costes from the Dentalpreneur podcast from the Dental Success Institute. And he is one of the guys just known for systemization and the importance of implementing that kind of thing in your practice. So I knew I had to get him on for this season because he has just such practical, amazing examples and advice for implementing systems in your practice and what a difference that can make. So I hope you enjoy this episode. So I have with me here today, Dr. Mark Costes. Thank you so much for being on with me again and talking about something that is near and dear to both of our hearts. So I appreciate you being here.
My pleasure, Richard.
Okay, so the question today is centered around this idea of systemization. And for me, this was new to me when I read the book, The E-Myth Revisited. And read that book, changed my perspective. I didn't like the corny analogies that they had in the pie shop, and now it's a barista shop. The story was great. It was a great analogy. I was a little bit tired of the story by the end. But the core point of this book is that you have to step back from being a technician, aka a dentist, and learn how to be a manager and an entrepreneur and create systems within your business, your practice, that you could eventually step away from and turn it into a franchise. And if you can turn your individual practice into a repeatable franchise, then you literally can. You can own multiple practices, or you can hire an associate to fill in your spot and you just own it. Or you can continue to practice dentistry and have these systems running all around you that make it run like a business. Instead of, why am I so frustrated with my business? So there's this idea of systemization that you have specialized in almost. I feel like it's one of your main points when I listen to your podcast and some of your lecturing. And it seems so obvious once you understand it, but also at the same time, I don't see a lot of people doing this. So why don't dentists naturally systemize their practice? Why is it when you walk into a practice, it's not all laid out and systematized?
Well, I think that it goes back to let me back up a second.
Sure, back up all you want.
If we're talking about the E-Myth Revisited, which was one of the best business books ever written, this is not a problem just for dentists. This is a universal problem for all small businesses. Most people don't see the importance of systemization because they're viewing their business through the eyes of a technician. They're just like anybody. You're a great cook. All of your friends tell you you got to open up your own restaurant.
Why not?
And because you are a great cook, we think that people will fly into the restaurant and the business will take care of itself.
Right.
If you're a great cook, you're a great chef, you're a great mechanic, you're a great hairstylist. Same thing for every type of small business that you can think of.
Right.
Dentistry is no different. When we get out of dental school, we have a clinician's mindset. And we believe, because this is the way we were brought up, all the way through undergrad and all the way through dental school, this is what our instructors kind of taught us in dental school. You become the best clinician possible. You develop your suite of clinical skills and the world will be the path to your door.
Right.
And it's simply not true. There is a huge amount of knowledge that you must gather
but if I'm
in order
good
to
enough,
have a successful business.
If I'm good enough, everything will take care of itself, right?
Right.
I just got to get a little bit better. I just got to get a little better at my dentistry and it'll be easy to make money.
Yeah, I've had this constant slipping in the production and collections and the revenue and the money in the bank for the last 6 months. What I really need to do is go buy an E4D.
Right.
I need to go take this implant course because I need to obviously increase my suite of clinical skills to pull myself out of this rapid decline in the business.
Obviously.
So it's from that perspective, I think, that people forget about the basics of business and the fact that you need to be an effective, his other two are manager and entrepreneur, in order to run a successful, profitable business. So systemization is just the bedrock of all of that. You've got to have consistent, replicable systems in your business that no matter who is sitting in that position on any given day, you will get a consistent result.
Okay. So in your mind, that is the end result of systemization, is the standardization of the quality of the patient experience and product of your practice, so that no matter if you have new staff, old staff, if you have a patient that's a little harder or a little easier, if you do things the same way, you're going to maximize the best experience for that patient. And if you can figure out how to repeat that over and over and over, that's the end goal of systemization for you.
That's right. That's right. All of us want a staff full of Michael Jordans.
Right.
Everybody wants all-stars on their team. And some of us are lucky enough to either have developed those people on our team or just got lucky enough to have ended up with a bunch of them on their team. But all-stars go away. People get pregnant. All-stars get job transfers. Yes, they do. Sometimes they don't like you for whatever reason and they'll leave. Sometimes they leave for a $2 raise. So
it would be perfect if we had all Michael Jordans, all perfect staff who knew what to do, knew how to run a business better than we do, but we're not going to find that. How, if I want to now, I'm buying into this idea of systemization, what would be the first thing in your practice that you systematized? If you try and tackle everything, I want to systematize my clinical protocols and my business protocols and my front desk and my calls and my marketing, all this. What would be a high yield place for someone to start? And then what would they do specifically to turn what they're doing in their practice into a system that is repeatable?
Great question. That's a long answer, but a great question.
No, I'm sorry. I was Howard Fran's podcast producer for a little while, and he's the king of compound questions. And so I just like to follow in his shoes there.
It's funny. I was just listening to one of his podcasts this morning, and I swear he had a 12-part question.
Right. And I've learned wow, from the worst in terms of questions. He's great, and that's one of the things that I like to make fun of him for. So now I can make fun of myself.
Okay, so let's picture a binder that's sitting on top of your desk. Okay, this is our operations manual. This is our Bible.
Okay.
So you open it up. Section 1 has got to be foundational principles. This is our mission, vision, and core values. You've got to start with culture, with the culture of your office, because if you don't define the culture and you don't define what is expected of each person that's working there, this is how we treat our patients. This is our philosophy on how we treat each other. This is how we communicate. These are things we do, and these are things we don't do.
Right.
This is what we believe our mission statement is, why we exist. This is what we believe our vision statement is, where we are going in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what we want the practice to look like when it's quote unquote done. And then the core values, how we treat each other, how we treat the patient, what are our philosophies. You have to start with that.
Okay.
You have to start with the culture piece.
I'm gonna ask you this. How do you turn that into something that is real and that you get buy-in on versus like our core values are to put the customer first, and it's just like the same corporate slogan that's on the wall that sure, that's what the wall says, but is that what we actually do? Like how do you create this? And maybe that's a whole different rabbit hole, and maybe we're gonna have to set that aside. But this whole operations manual, my biggest fear is that like you create it and then it just sits there. So
right.
I don't know. I don't even know what question I was asking anymore. But is that realistic? Like for me to say this is my vision and I'm going to put it on paper. How do I make that mean something rather than just being trite and ignored?
Yeah, great question. And here's the secret to all of those questions that you just asked.
One of the things that I'm most excited about from Blue Sky Bio is their free implant planning software.
With this software, it's free to download. Anyone can get it, and you can take any cone beam scan and you can design your own guided surgery stents and then export those to be 3D printed. And so basically now it costs me about between $20 and $25 per case to do them fully guided.
That's crazy.
And at price, I still never try to make the argument that it's standard of care or that you can't do a good job without a guide. But for me, at that price, I think I'd be stupid not to. It takes me virtually no time. It makes the procedure quicker. It reduces my stress in the procedure. So I think it's a no-brainer.
So just as a comparison, I've been calling around to other guided software companies, and one of them that I found cost $6,000 up front, $600 per year, and then each guide that you export is another $60. That's not including guide fabrication, because a lot of these companies lock you into their guides and their company. So the fact that Blue Sky Bio puts out this software for free, doesn't charge you any annual fees, and then the export cost is only $25 per export is mind-blowing. There's literally no reason for you to not download this and give it a try if you're placing implants. Go to blueskybio.com and download the free Blue Sky Plan 3 software. While you're there, use the promo code Shared Practices in the additional comments box of your cart to receive $200 off of a purchase of $500 or more, or $250 off of an implant starter kit. Some restrictions apply, limited to one use per provider.
Yeah, great question. And here's the secret to all of those questions that you just asked. Your team has to have complete authorship in this. Okay. If you pull up on Google, what are some dental office mission statements, or what are some small business mission statements, vision statements, core value statements, you're going to get no buy-in to that.
If you just like message your buddy from dental school, hey man, what's your core values in your practice? Okay, good, and then copy. It doesn't work. You can't copy and paste anymore.
That's just that's a ridiculously useless exercise. No, it does not work. You'll never get buy-in from your team. So the whole idea of the operations manual, the way that we do it, is the team writes the operations manual. And if you don't do it that way, your fear is going to happen, where it's going to sit there on your desk, collecting dust, and there's going to be no ownership by anybody on your team. So you assemble the first part of it, the culture piece. You just create a half-day meeting, and everybody takes ownership in this, and everybody takes authorship in this. So everybody writes down what they think a good mission statement would be. You give a couple examples, and you guys help me write this, and then they help you refine it, and you take pieces of one idea and merge them with another. So you guys all have authorship. It doesn't matter how good it sounds if it's not totally grammatically correct, if it's a run-on sentence.
Sure.
Who cares, as long as everybody takes part in creating this thing and they really believe in it. And that goes the same for all of the entire operations manual. They have to have authorship in this, or they're not going to believe in it, and they're not going to follow anything inside of it. But I want you to picture something in your mind here, okay?
Okay.
Picture 3 intersecting circles.
Mm-hmm.
In the first circle, it says culture, okay?
Okay.
To the right of it, there's another intersecting circle, and it says operational systemization.
Okay.
Okay. And then the third circle down below the other two, so it's intersecting the other two, so it kind of looks a little bit like a triangle. That says cash flow and overhead control. Okay. Those are 3 circles. A bigger circle around that, all of that, is a circle that says leadership. Okay. So you have to develop yourself as a leader. Once this operations manual is written by your team and edited by you, you have to be a strong enough leader to hold them accountable to what's written in that operations manual. That is the linchpin of this entire thing. So we could talk all day about what goes in an operations manual. First, it's culture. Next, it's operational systemization. Next, it's overhead and cash flow control. But if that big circle, if you can't hit that linchpin, if you are not a strong leader, then none of this matters.
Okay. And so this isn't something to have them write and then throw at them and say, okay, now do this. It requires constant development and application and leadership from the dentist. And some of that is going to be accountability. Some of that is going to be training and teaching. How else is this leadership manifest? Like, what are you doing to go back to this and become a leader surrounding this operations manual?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is you have to be a strong leader to get them to participate in the authorship of this thing, right?
You mean they're not going to really, really want to do this? Like, so bad that they're like, well, yeah, let's cancel everything for a half day. You might get some pushback on that at first.
Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious because just getting the operations manual together is your first exercise in leadership.
Okay.
You have to be persistent and you have to be focused and you have to be disciplined to get this thing done. But the next part is, the actual creation of it, you have to put your leadership elements throughout that. So the accountability piece has to be throughout the entire operations manual. And you have to be a strong enough leader. When I say you have to be a strong enough leader, you actually have to hold them accountable for what they agreed to be accountable for.
Okay.
And you guys know, everybody out there that owns a dental practice knows that when things get busy and things are hectic, you overhear the receptionist answer the phone a certain way and it just grates on you. You know that's not the way that it's written in the operations manual. You know that's not the way that she agreed to do it. But you put that conversation off until it's not so busy, and then it gets pushed off to the next week, the next month, the next year. Before you know it, nothing in your operations manual sticks because you're not a strong enough leader to have those uncomfortable conversations and call them out when that needs to happen.
Well, so it sounds like to be a leader around this, you have to hold people accountable. To hold people accountable, you have to be measuring what they're doing. So there has to be
Absolutely
some way to audit and monitor and track how they're performing according to what you've decided to do. So what would be an example of this? Like, what would be a system within your operations manual that you want to standardize, and then you need to hold someone accountable to. And so to hold them accountable, you need to measure something. So let's choose, I don't know, what would be a good example that you like to use of what this actually looks like for one specific system?
Okay, great. I'll give you just a basic one. Let's say you pick a position.
Let's say front desk answering the phones.
Okay, that one's easy. You together, you guys write the ideal script and you get some sort of call tracking software. So every call that comes in, it gets recorded automatically and there's a dashboard and you can have a meeting with them once a week to go over exactly how they handled every single phone call. You could, if they picked up 50 phone calls, every single one of them is recorded. You pick 5 at random, listen to them, give them some constructive criticism. What did you do well here? What didn't you do well here? That's an easy one.
Okay.
Let's say you're having trouble. There's a certain number of things that are frustrating you because they're just not getting done every single day, right? So you're continually asking your office manager, why is XYZ not getting done every single day? I've reminded these people every single day. And they seem like they're ignoring me. It's frustrating me. It's just not getting done. Why isn't the trash getting taken out? Why aren't you sweeping, the operatories in between every patient? Why am I finding floss on the ground when I shouldn't be? Whatever. Any little bit of minutia that's driving you absolutely nuts. The first little trick that we do to get people into the swing of the whole systemization thing is we do end of day protocols for everybody, right?
Okay.
So say for the back office, we want to make sure every single day that they're doing the doctor's post-op calls for them. That is something that we do at our practices. We want to make sure that they're all, each one is assigned a certain drawer that must be restocked every single day.
Okay.
Right? That has to get done. It has to be clean and restocked, right? Then you have to do your community, basically housekeeping chore, right? Whatever that happens to be for the day. And then they have to finish all of their treatment notes by the end of the day. I'm just throwing things out there.
And this is perfect. These are really tactical, both things that are driving you nuts, like your assistant never has this ready for you, or there's something in your office you see all the time, everywhere, that's consistently a problem, or the things that you have to do at the end of every single day, those are two really good starting points because A, they're going to increase your happiness and your sanity right off the bat. You're going to see the results of systemization. And B, it's really specific and you can hold them accountable. It's obvious if it's not done.
Right. And they could be totally unrelated and random. Like I just said, post-op calls and making sure that your drawer that you're assigned to is restocked at the end of every day. Right. So whatever it is that's driving you crazy, create a little document that's called end of day protocol. You could put it on a laminated piece of paper. It could be 5 or 6 or 7 things that you want to make sure they do every single day before they leave.
Okay.
They have to submit that to their direct supervisor. Their direct supervisor has an end of day protocol as well. They submit that to the office manager. So everybody has checks and balances for the things that are driving you crazy that aren't getting done. That's the fastest way to start this whole systemization thing.
Awesome.
And doctor, all you have to do is hold your office manager accountable for her end of day protocol, who holds the supervisors accountable for their end of day protocol, who holds their assistants accountable for their end of day protocol. So that's how you get this whole systemization thing started, is with the simple thing called the end of day protocol. That's how we start usually most practices here.
Cool. No, that's exactly what I was looking for. Something very tactical and real and immediate that people can try out. And then once they struggle with this, then they're going to call you and say, okay, I need some more help.
Yeah. I mean, this could take 3, 4, 5 months to get this operations manual together, get everybody on board with it and get it humming. But once it is, like literally, like you said, my operations manual, we have in all 5 of my practices, and we use the same operations manual, same scripts, same way to verify insurance, same way to check in a patient, same way to check out a patient, same way to deliver a treatment plan, same touch point for the patient experience, the eight touch point experience, patient experience.
Okay.
Everything is exactly the same. Once you get that done, you'll have the power to hand that over to your team and not worry about having to micromanage anybody.
Well, and so it sounds so good, but there has to be a lot of bumps along the way. So what do you do when you create these? You say, okay, we're going to do these end of day sheets. We're going to figure out what needs to get done and what's not getting done. We're going to hold people accountable. Where does this break typically initially? And what do you have to do at that point? So if you get pushback and you get a team member who's just, even though they have their sheet, they're still not getting stuff done. What do you do at that point?
Right. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but it comes down to leadership. First of all, you need to put in consequences for not following, their accountabilities. Usually it's, verbal, written, then you're finding somewhere else to work, basically. And the whole time, according to HR rules. So you're going to need to counsel them each time. Whenever there's a verbal, it ends up as a written
and document
written document in their chart or in their
employee record,
employee record. Yep. So you're going to have to identify exactly what the consequences are. And if you don't, and you don't hold them accountable, then whose fault really is that? That's really the leader's fault and not the employee's fault. So it comes back down to leadership and really having defined consequences for not following their accountability.
And I would make a plug here for, there's a book. It used to be called Crucial Confrontations, and now it's called Crucial Accountability. It's put out by a company called Vital Smarts. My dad actually owned a business training their products and their courses, and Crucial Conversations is one of their books, and Crucial Accountability is another one of their books. And it teaches very, very specific skills to hold people accountable and to say, in a non-confrontational way, in a way that doesn't turn emotional, that keeps everyone in an open dialogue and builds a relationship so that by the end of this little confrontation or accountability session that you're having, it's not like it's me versus you. By the end of it, you're on a team together. So that would be one resource that if people struggle with holding people accountable, go find the book, Crucial Accountability by the company Vital Smarts. And they have some...
I just wrote it down.
It's awesome. I think you'll really love it. Anyone who reads Crucial Confrontations or Crucial Accountability, like, can instantly see, oh, I've been doing this wrong my entire life. This makes so much sense. And it systematizes having hard conversation when stakes are high, emotions run high, when it matters to people, and people tend to perform their worst. They tend to get ugly and accuse people and get defensive and get on the attack. And then everyone closes off and it gets worse and worse and worse. So if this is something you struggle with, that's definitely a resource that I would recommend you checking out.
That's great. That's a great resource. Thank you for that.
So I'm trying to think what else. Kind of some initial steps. Okay. So here's the last part of systemization that I wanted to ask you. Okay, I thought of two. I'm sorry. We'll go with the first part. What needs to be systematized and what doesn't? Because you could take this to the nth degree and maybe overdo it. Is that possible, to over-systematize your practice? Every time that I delegate something else to my dental assistant or my dental team, my life gets better. Unfortunately, it takes time to train and help them understand why and get them to the level where I trust their quality in these different aspects that we delegate. Spear Education understands this and has created an entire curriculum of education courses for each team member. One of the ones that I loved the most was this handling difficult patient conversations. These are patients who don't want x-rays, impressions, or who just don't want to do the dental treatment, and they're asking the assistant if they would do it.
Can I ask you what you're worried about and maybe help clarify the reasoning behind radiographs?
I assume you want them done just every so often like everyone else, but I don't want to do them just to be caught up or up to date. I don't want to have the radiation. I've had so many of these done in my mouth and x-rays and things for my surgeries and my accidents. I don't want it.
Let me address both your concerns separately. Taking them just to be up to date.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a team full of people who can handle these objections, which frankly can be some of the most frustrating and annoying conversations to have? If that's something that you're interested in and want access to the highest standard in online education for your team members, sign up for a guest pass at speareducation.com. Is that possible, to over-systematize your practice?
I think it is.
Okay.
I think it is. For instance, I have a very specific way that I cut my crown preps, or I do my molar root canals. And I don't believe that it's necessary to write every single step down of that procedure. I think that's overkill, because the people that I work with are going to know what that is, exactly what my preferences are. And if I happen to lose a particular chairside assistant, then a new one comes in. We'll talk through that. And what all my preferences don't need to be written down, because really, what's the practicality of having somebody sit down and read 25 pages of exactly how I want my crown prep done when I could just tell them while they're sitting there with me, with the patient, right? So certain things like that, I don't think need to hit the operations manual. And I do think that there is risk that if you write down too much detail for every single thing that happens in the office, then that becomes a dust collector paperweight.
Sure.
Because it just becomes a book full of minutia that nobody is ever going to read. I like to stick with bullet points and general ideas and checklists. If there's a checklist of 10 things, but each thing has, sub checklist of 10 to 20 things underneath it, you don't have to write the sub checklist down. Just write the main idea, so people kind of get the general idea. That's kind of how I feel about that.
Cool. No, that's perfect. And I think people need to hear that there's an extreme end of this spectrum that is to be avoided. Both because it's going to be too much work to set it up. It's not going to be practical to hold people accountable to it. It's not going to help your business. How many, on average, if you were to say per employee, how many checklists are they going through a day? Is this like they've got the end of day sheet, and then throughout the day, are there multiple checklists that they're using for their different responsibilities? What does this look like?
Let's see. Let me
on
break
a rubber hits the road type level.
Okay, more tactical stuff. So when my chairside assistants walk into a room, they have a quick checklist that is face down
Okay.
on the countertop when I walk in, and it says the following have been done, and it's like, rheostat, overhead light,
Burrs
what else is on
and
there? Burrs and so it's got a very basic 5 or 6 things that are on there. So if the burrs don't happen to be on there, if my high speed and my slow speed doesn't happen to be on there, those are all they all physically have to check those off and then sign the bottom of them.
Right.
Okay, so that's one checklist. And then they have the checklist and the sterilization for whatever the procedures are, because we want to make sure that each person that sets up a new cassette is accountable for that cassette. So
so that you don't get these cassettes where you're like, well, where's this and this in this cassette? And they're like, oh, sorry, we forgot to fix that one. We'll fix it. Let me go grab another one.
Yeah. Or there's a bunch of there's a broken surgical scissor, or there's whatever, bioburden just smudged all over everything. So everybody has to write their initials. They throw it in the cassette.
Oh, cool.
And they're held accountable for that. And then there's the end of the day protocol. So for the back office, there's only 3.
Okay.
For the front office, it's a little bit looser because we have really intense front office training. We even have videos. This is how you answer the phone. This is how you enter a new patient. We have training videos for that. So they have less minute by minute checklists because they have so much going on. And we have an outside billing department for all of our offices that it's my billing department, but that's offsite.
Okay. That's centralized, so they don't have to worry about all that.
Yeah, but the billing department has their own checklist too. So, we rely heavily on the end of day protocol checklist for the front desk, and then the office manager has one checklist.
And so it sounds like, if I could cluster this into different groups, there's specific things that need to be done that don't tend to happen naturally perfectly, and that's what a checklist is really useful for setting things up the same way in your cassette, in your operatory. End of the day, it needs to happen the same way every time. So there's a checklist for that. But then there's other things that are skills, like how we're going to do this crown prep and what I'm going to need next, that are trained, that aren't necessarily systematized through a checklist or a really nitty-gritty written list. But those skills and the way that you do those is probably systematized in the operations manual, but it's just not a checklist that you break out and laminate and have them run through every day. Is that right?
That's exactly right. I mean, if you are having them go through a checklist, like now you retract left cheek,
right?
And now we're doing number 19, so you would retract cheek.
Or,
if we're doing number 31, you would retract tongue. I mean, it's unnecessary.
Right. Okay. So the last part of this was the other. I thought of 2 questions, and here's the last one. I promise. It is, how often do you review these, and how do you systematize the review of this operations manual so that it remains relevant and a living manual, rather than something that you realize these systems aren't working, but you're still doing them just because, or what you're doing in the practice has diverged from what you have systematized in the book, and you need to review either, is the system broken? Or are we not doing what we should be doing, or do we need to update the system? How often do you kind of do that with your operations manual, and who does that?
That's a great question. And this goes down to a whole other rabbit hole that we could go down, but I'm just going to keep it as general as possible.
Okay.
We review the accountabilities once a week. The office manager has a meeting with the department heads once a week.
Okay.
And the department heads have a meeting with their direct reports once a week. Every 2 weeks, we have a short whole team meeting where we go over the accountabilities of everybody, what's being missed and what's going well.
Okay.
And then every single day we have a morning huddle. So we have department meetings, we have whole team meetings. We have a short team meeting on the second week of the month, and a longer team meeting at the end of the month as a month end recap. and then those department meetings and direct report meetings once a week.
Okay. And so that's kind of baked into that. This, are we doing things? Are we struggling with things? Is this, are you changing the operations manual ever, or is it kind of now set in stone for you? And now this is what you're doing at all your offices. And so, this works. So we're not really changing it, or is it still a little bit of a living manual for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a living, breathing, fluid manual.
Okay.
And if something changes slightly at one office, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of the operations manuals at the other 4 offices need to change. If it works better for that patient population and for that group, that's part of that authorship and that ownership of that owner's manual. You have to pick your battles.
Right.
If they say, hey, as a group, we've decided that it would be better if this was the system, as long as there's a system and the end result is what you want it to be, then let them have levity there. That's a big part of getting them on board and owning that operations manual and owning the whole notion of a systemized dental practice.
Okay, awesome. Well, that gives us a very clear picture of what does this look like? How could I try and do this? Where am I going to encounter some pushback and some barriers? And then how do I make this successful long term and use this as a way to lead rather than something to fight over and get people in trouble with? Oh, you didn't do your checklist. No, this is okay. We need to go back and train and lead and inspire and work with these people. And if they're not willing to work with us, then eventually at some point we need to get different people on the bus. So this idea of systemization doesn't come naturally to business owners because you tend to be wrapped up doing the dentistry, baking your pies, being a mechanic. And this is what's going to make you successful and happy versus stressed out and frustrated and struggling to run a business. And that's why I'm putting this episode is in season 2, because I think you need to understand up front what this does and doesn't look like, so that when you're looking at practices to buy and when you're looking at your financial systems and overhead and all these other things, you can put it in a context of systems. What is our system related to this or that, to accounts receivable or payroll or marketing or hiring? What's our hiring system, and how do we fire someone? How do we document these things? I think it's a fundamental skill and concept that you have to understand as a business owner. And if you go for 10 years in your dental practice without understanding it, you're missing out on a whole nother level that you could be taking your practice to. So thank you so much for getting on and sharing your knowledge and experience of doing this over and over, not only across your multiple practices, but helping other dentists systematize their practice and take it to the next level. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciated being here.
Awesome. Hey, hopefully we get to talk to you soon, and I'll have plenty more off-the-wall rabbit hole questions for you next time.
And whenever you need me, man, I'm here for you, buddy.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mark. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you guys haven't heard Mark Costas in person, he is phenomenal. He's one of the most genuine, sincere guys I know. He's recommended some books that have changed my life multiple times over. Go listen to his podcast, the Dentalpreneur podcast. You can reach out to me, and I can get you in contact with him if you have some questions for him. But all around amazing guy. Highly recommend everything he puts out. Next week and in the following weeks, we're going to be going deeper into acquisitions. We're going to get into some valuation and transition things. I'm really excited for the content because I've learned a ton. There's stuff that I know now that I didn't know a month ago before I started recording these episodes. You're really going to enjoy it. If you are trying to acquire a practice right now and you have the practice financials from a practice you're looking at and you don't know how to value it, Dr. Hunter Smith is willing to take a look at these numbers with you and me. And we're going to do an episode in the future where we do kind of a live breakdown of some practice financials that people are actually looking at. So email me at richard@sharedpractices.com and I'll forward those to Hunter and maybe we can make it on the show. Talk to you soon. Leave us a review. Share this with a friend. We'll talk to you next time.